Welcome back to another Mission Models painting tutorial. Today we are focusing on the Rubicon Models M4 Composite Sherman. This kit can also be built as the Firefly hybrid. We will not be going through the workflow. This is going to be a straightforward basic painting tutorial to show you how we do it. For further mixing ratios and technical instruction, please refer to our other previous videos, for example, the workflow tutorials. So let's get started. All right, so we have our M4 Sherman here. This is a 1/56 scale or 28 millimeters. It's wargaming, tabletop wargaming piece for the Boltaction style games. But these can also be built as static display models. The detail's great. On this particular model, we did not glue our tracks and suspension on, so we can paint them separately. So we've got our upper hull here. So let's get started. We are starting out with Mission Models Tan Primer, which is MMS 006. Tan is always a perfect color for a top coat of olive drab. So we're going to get started here. We are using our Harder Steenbeck Evolution. And we're spraying between about 10 to 15 psi. Like we always say, test before you spray. Make sure that your ratios are good, and let's get going. Nice even coats. Just a quick prime. Just make sure you cover the model. Nice light wet coats, as we always say. And this is just going to be a quick painting tutorial, and we're just going to want to kind of let this dry off to the side. Okay, and we'll just make sure to get nice solid coverage there as well. And again, we're using Tan Primer, Mission Models MMS 006, and we'll fill the airbrush up again, just real quick. That's probably too much primer for just this track section. But if you have other models in the series that you want to paint, you've got plenty of primer. Again, nice light wet coats, and just let it dry. Be dry in about 20 minutes, or you can accelerate the drying time with some cold air, so it's dry to the touch. Okay, so we've been letting our Sherman dry off to the side. We've used Tan Primer here, and tan is great because it's a neutral color. It's got a lot of yellows and things like that in there, so it's a perfect base coat when you're using a top coat of olive drab, which also has tans, yellows, things like browns in it. So it's an excellent complement. It's not dark, it's not too light. It gives a nice contrast to your top coat. Anyhow, we've got our suspension and tracks and our upper hull. Our next step is we're going to take Mission Models MMP 040 Tire Black. We've already mixed up the paint, and we're going to put in our airbrush, and there's a reason why we're doing this. Okay, now always test before you shoot the model. Make sure your spray pattern and your paint consistency is good. We're going to spray the tires, and we're doing this in advance. So our tires are done. Flip it over the back side. All right. And we're spraying about 10 to 15 psi. And we're basically hitting the tires, and we can hit the tracks a little bit too, but we're going to go back in a little bit later and actually do the tracks. So, and I'm going to wash my hands. I should have been using something to hold the part with, but I forgot. So anyway, so we've got our essentially have our tires base coated in tire black. And our next step is to start doing our olive drab base coats, and we're using MMP number 25, which is US Army olive drab. So again, like we always say, test before you actually start spraying the model. Make sure your spray pattern and your mixing ratios are correct and to your liking. So let's get going here. Spraying at about 10 to 15 psi. Nice even methodical passes, about 2 to 3 inches from the work. It's not necessary to try and cover everything in one pass. And pay attention to what you're doing. And we are going fast, so we don't end up with a extremely long video, because this is not a workflow video. This is basically a painting tutorial to show you how efficiently you can paint your models. And we're just gonna kind of give it one more quick dusting. We remove the turret, get underneath there, so if you happen to turn the turret, you don't have any voids or unpainted surfaces. Make sure to get the underside underneath the barrel there. And that should do it for the moment. We're going to again, we're going to let this dry, but our next step will be doing the track assemblies. Okay, so we are letting our Sherman turret and main hull dry off to the side, and we're going to move on here to our track assemblies. We've taken out a different airbrush. We're using a Harder Steenbeck Infinity with a .15 needle nozzle, and we're going to start doing our road wheels and suspension. And we're using the same color, which is MMP number 25 US Army olive drab. Like we always say, test before you actually spray the model. And we're going to show you how you can just quickly do your road wheels. Minimal effort. And Mission Models paint is extremely opaque, so it'll cover our tire black. And you can see now why we did the tire black first. Then we essentially have our tires painted in advance. Just take your time. We're going pretty quickly here. And as your wheels are drying, you can then just go in and essentially do your suspension. And then go back for some follow-up coats. But you can see the way we're doing this, really how quickly essentially you can move along. So we're going to let this one dry. We're going to pull the next one out. All right, just a little bit of start in the center and pull back till you get the rim of the wheel. And it's okay if you get OD on the tires, because we will do a very quick cleanup on that to refine our tire and wheel section. Very quick. And then just repeat until you have nice solid coverage. And if you're going to do any weathering, it's fine. You just don't want to go too heavy. You don't want to start pooling up the paint, but even if you do by accident, just leave it alone. it will self-level, and it'll be absolutely fine. Right, so let's bring back the other one. Naturally, it's going to be a little darker at first because we have a darker base underneath, which was the tire black. So just exercise control. If it's one of the first times that you've done this, just practice. That's all it takes. A little bit of practice, or a lot of practice, or as much as you can squeeze in. And then just keep building up your color layers until you're satisfied. We're spraying at about 10 to 15 psi. Nice light air pressure. Again, this might take a couple coats. But it's also the proper way to actually paint, rather than trying to just cover in one pass, and you'll get the best finish. And don't forget, you know, on the actual vehicle, you'll have more shadows around the suspension, the road wheels, and so forth, and it'll be lighter towards the top of the hull where the sunlight hits. Alrighty, so here we are, and we've basically let everything dry for the most part. Now, at the rate we're going, the paint is not technically at 100% cured, so it is a little bit soft because we are going very, very fast. Your typical drying time is, let's just say, 3 to 12 hours. Overnight's always usually best to be properly and chemically and technically cured 100% for maximum durability. But we're moving along here. Everything's dry to the touch, so we can keep on going. You can do the same thing. Just beware. Anyway, so our next step is we're going to start adding some faded colors. We're starting with MMP number 020, U.S. Army olive drab faded number 1. All right. So again, we are using the Harder Steenbeck Infinity with a .15 needle nozzle. So let's get started here. Now, sunlight's going to hit the top of the vehicle before it hits the lower surfaces. It's usually darker at the bottom, the shadows, sunlight, and so forth. So what we're doing is we're fading in some of the faded olive drab here. Give it a nice faded look. Now it's going to be subtle. Faded olive drab is definitely lighter than our base coat. So even though it doesn't look like something is happening, our paint is very, very opaque. And as it dries, you will start to see the change. Still light. Use your best judgment. Some of the high spots here. It's going to be subtle. It's going to look great. Let's get the top of the barrel. Fade in a little here. You want to have a nice kind of bleached, worn out effect. And you can always, if you feel like you've applied too much, you can always go in and correct that with darker shades. There's quite a few different faded versions of olive drab. So we also suggest using your gut instinct as well. You can always look at reference material and so forth. Top of the mantlet here. Glacis plate. I get a little bit of a streaking effect. And hopefully you can see what's going on. You don't want it to look like patchwork. I want to try and get as much of a natural look as possible. Okay, so let's move on over here. Grabbed our suspension, and we'll just add a little bit of contrast in. Even though we did say it could be a little darker down here, but we're doing it anyways. Can alternate some of the wheels, give a little bit of variation. Good. And the more you apply in light feathered coats, the more you'll start to see a change. You can see how quickly we can do this. Let's get the back end a little bit. We could have painted all of our on-vehicle tools first, but I guess we didn't, but we will. Your engine deck. Some of this cheek armor. So now you're getting some nice variation in tonality. Be sure not to cover all of your base coat. Just feather it in. It'll start to blend together. Starting to look pretty good. Make some things stand out a bit. All right, so let's let this dry off to the side, and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so we're back here again, and our next step is we're gonna start working on our tracks. Okay, and then we'll be painting some of the on-vehicle equipment. So we're gonna move this upper hull off to the side. So we don't have any accidents. Let it dry. We're going to use Mission Models cold rolled steel. That's MMM002 cold rolled steel. And again, we're using the same airbrush, Harder Steenbeck Infinity with a .15 needle nozzle. And again, always test before you spray. Some nice fine lines if you want. So here we go. We're going to airbrush our tracks. Let's get started. And again, like we said before, all right, we're gonna put this, clip on here so I don't spray my hands as usual. And we'll start to fade in some of our cold rolled steel. Again, we're going fast. Take your time. Get the edges of the tracks there. get a nice fine spray pattern there so you can paint everything without getting a lot of overspray. So let's let this dry off to the side, and we'll do the next one. All right. Don't try and cover everything in one pass. Much, much better results in multiple passes. And then we'll go in and we'll do all the track pads as well. Same method. Show you how quickly we can do that. Do this, almost this entire model with an airbrush. Go from the back side. I believe these are rubber pads on there, so we'll do that as well. And we'll use tire black for the pads. All right. And let's just double check this here. All right, so basically there's our tracks. We want to let that dry. So we'll just let that dry off to the side. And we're going to clean the airbrush. We'll be right back, and we'll paint some on-vehicle equipment. Okay, so we've sprayed our tracks, and now what we've done is we've again taken our cold rolled steel, number MMM002, and we put a drop of paint on the bottom of an epoxy mixing cup as a wet palette, and we are going to paint our machine gun real quick. And we've already painted the 50 cal that'll go on later. We just forgot to show it. Yeah, these things might have already been olive drab as it is, but oh well. Can always fix that up a little later if it is indeed OD. But there's a lot of different ways to take care of that if we're wrong. We're not going off of any kind of reference here, just going from what memory serves, and we can easily refine this a bit. Just take your time. We can do various washes later to fix anything up. All right. Let's get our shovel. Right. Just real quick. And our axe, pickaxe. So we're going to do this before we really do any further weathering. So we put another drop on a pallet on the same epoxy cup that we had used previously. Just don't mix your cold rolled steel that you had there. Brown. And X handle. If you get any overages, you can easily just go back and touch it up. Not a big deal. All right, so essentially there's our tools. And I don't know if this part of the handle would be wood or metal, or I don't know, but it's wood now. All right, looks good. Let's let it dry. So our next step is going to be decals, and what we're going to use next is the Mission Models MMA 005 semi-gloss clear coat. Now you can decal right over the paint without a gloss clear. We don't recommend regular gloss. We typically recommend a semi. So we're just going to spray in the areas where we're going to decal. Again, we have the clear coat in the airbrush already, and we're going to test before we hit the model. And some nice light coats just in the areas that you're actually going to apply the decals. You don't have to cover the whole thing. Just in these areas. That should be it. Now, you really want to let your clear coats dry, but we're going to, since we're moving along fast, we're just going to go for it. So, all right, so we've got our semi-gloss on there. We'll let that dry, and we'll add the decals. So, give us a few minutes. Okay, so our Sherman upper hull is off drying to the side with our semi-gloss clear coat, and while that's actually drying, we are going to do a wash here and clean up our road wheels so we can stay efficient and keep moving along here. Again, if you want to know about making washes, you can see our other workflow tutorials and various other videos that discuss washes. We are using, again, number 040 Tire Black to do this, and this is where we're going to kind of clean up our road wheels. This is a pure water-based acrylic wash, just like the rest of Mission Models paint, which is all acrylic, water-based. You can officially make your washes. You don't need to use any kind of, enamels or toxic chemicals to do the washes. The washes will flow just like an oil, and you can just watch it flow, quick and easy. And we'll be doing more washes and so forth on the upper hull after we do our decals. So we might as well, while that's drying, just take advantage of quote-unquote downtime of other parts, but you can see it flowing. You can build up the washes and make them as opaque as you want. You can also adjust your washes accordingly. One thing we can do is we can take an epoxy mixing cup or just whatever you might have laying around, put a drop of your chosen color. If you want to pick up a little bit more pigment, rather than adjusting your wash, you can just dip your brush into your drop of paint over here and then back into the wash just to make it a little bit more dense. This will dry quickly. It's going to give you a great look, and you just see it flowing just like that. And we'll also be doing some basic weathering towards the end after we get our decals on. Again, this is about using your best judgment. We can't do it for you. We can show you how to do it. So these are your basic principles. Let's get our, make sure we get some of these rubber rollers up here. And remember, you're going to get a lot of road grime and so forth. So it doesn't have to be, you know, perfect. I mean, perfect is always good, but, you know, just depends on the look you're going for. Now we can take our, again, we can take our wash and we can start touching some of the various suspension parts. Just watch it flow right in there. Again, just adjust accordingly. You can make a wash out of any color. Just because it says North African dust on the bottle doesn't mean that's what it is. You can use all sorts of different tans, browns, blacks, whatever you find to be suitable when it comes to weathering colors. You can just see it flow right in there. Just get a little bit in our sprockets. Add just a little bit of depth. You don't want to go real heavy. You don't want to turn your model black. We always say that we like to use tire black because it's a nice neutral color. It's perfect for any type of as a wash over any type of color, because our tire black is not just straight black. It's got browns and greens, and it's more of a kind of a rubbery sort of color. So just start adding a little bit in there. You don't have to use an extra drop of paint on the side by any means. We're just showing you what you can do. Various options. So you see it, just kind of capillary action, and you can go in and manipulate and adjust the washes. If there's any overages, anything that you don't like, you can go back and just adjust it. So essentially we're just adding depth and a little bit of dimension to it. This is a good time also, we can just start touching some of the bolt heads and so forth, or the pins I should say, track pins. Kind of go in here. We like to use just a finer brush for this kind of thing. We don't like to cover the entire model in our wash, because then it's going to make your entire model dark. And then just go back, and just go back into the road wheels again. Just depends on the look you're going for. But we're just showing you the basic principles. And again, you can just adjust accordingly. You want your washes to be subtle. Again, get the bolts, axles. Just touch it quickly and lightly. And even though it may not look like, we always say, it may not look like anything's happening, but it is. Down there in your road wheels, just a little bit, just light. Doesn't need to be real dark. You don't want to turn it, you don't want it to look cartoonish and overdone. You want to try and get a nice scale appearance. Less is more. So we are going to let this The washes dry quickly, but we're going to let this dry off to the side, and we're going to then grab our upper hull and do a quick decal jobs, so then we can get to some final weathering and wrap this up. We're trying to keep this video quick because our other ones are, our other workflow videos are pretty long, but there's a reason for that. So, all right, that's looking pretty good. So we're gonna leave it alone, we'll let it dry, and we're gonna grab our Sherman hull and we'll move on to decals. All right, so we've got our tracks and whatnot drying off to the side. We've grabbed our Sherman hull. You can see the semi-gloss where we shot that earlier in preparation for decals. We've got our floaters here, and we're just gonna put them over here carefully. We've got our decals here, and we have a little cotton swab. We're going to use our favorite microsol. We always use it. Clear coats are chemically impervious to all setting solutions and so forth. So what we're going to do is just going to take a little bit here, pick up our decal, kind of blot off the excess water. All right. All right, so we've got our decals applied, and we let them dry. Again, we're going pretty fast here. We applied our semi-gloss, our decals, so forth, and now what we're going to do is we're going to go back in with the same semi-gloss that we used previously, just to seal them in. All right. That way you won't have any silvering. Just seal them in, you know, just apply the clear where the decal is. You don't have to go overboard. You don't have to cover the entire model. All right. So now what we're going to do briefly is we are going to take MMA 004 flat clear coat, and we're going to cancel out any of the semi that's on there. We've already got the flat in the airbrush, and basically the way you want to do this is you want to dust it on in light coats. That's how you apply it. Okay, just dust it on to cancel out any of that semi. Let each coat of flat dry. If you go on too heavy, you will end up again with flat. I mean with the semi-gloss, because you're applying too much resin and carrier. So the flat coat, you want to dust it on in light layers and then just let each one dry, and you can end up going dead flat. So just be cautious on how flat you really want to go. But again, you just want to dust it on. It will not turn chalky on you. And as it dries, it'll just continue to do its thing. So again, just from a distance, that's all you gotta do. Okay, so we're back, and we've applied our flat coat over our, well, here's what we did. We did a semi-gloss, we put the decals on, we sealed the decals with the semi-gloss, and then we hit it with our with the flat coat, MMA 004 in light dusted coats. Let each light dusted coat dry, and it'll work exactly as intended. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to do some aluminum highlights on our tracks. What I like to do is just put a drop to the side, put my finger in there. I always say, because I get more of a direct feel, and just hit some of the high spots. All right, you just want to kind of do this lightly, just trying to get a slight accent. You don't want it to be glaring. We always say that. Hit some of the sprockets, the sprocket there. So we're just kind of highlighting the tracks. You want it, like I said, you want it to be subtle. And then we'll cancel some of that out again with tire black. You can hit some of the the bolt heads here. You can also make aluminum washes and various things like that, but because we're going fast and it's a process, we are gonna skip the washes. All right. Any high bright spots, you can just you can fix that up real quick. All right, so just tone it down just a tad. Like I said, the finger, just kind of using your finger, pinky, just kind of gives you a nice kind of direct feel. And we don't like to dry brush anything at all. I wouldn't even necessarily consider this to be dry brushing. Get your sprockets, pins, various things like that. Just light, right? Maybe just a little bit on the top of the barrel. Just for a little bit of highlight. Tool holders, just light. Don't go overboard. Just be cautious. We have our machine gun, which we had painted off to the side. Just add a little slight amount of wear. And while we're at it, what we're going to do is paint something that we had missed. Take our brush here, just kind of add a little detail to the gun mount, just real quick. So many little things to remember. Okay. That's good. And at the same time, we'll again take our Japanese propeller brown. Probably use a lot of different browns and whatnot, but maybe just get the grips there. All right. So you can't really see it on the camera, but we're just gonna put it aside for later. Whoops. And a little bit more aluminum. Some highlights. And all this can be toned back down a little bit on our machine gun here. And cold rolled steel again, which spot that we forgot. There we go. Alrighty, so we are moving along quickly. We'll start adding a little bit more again in washes just briefly. And we'll do a few different types of washes. We're going back with our tire black, same wash that we used before. And you'll see that we had some highlights here, so we're going to tone down the aluminum highlights because we really don't want them glaring, but that will start to show through your tire black wash. So we're basically doing layers. Alright, so this will all show through. This is where we can start to tone down any of the aluminum, blend it together, tie it all in. Anything that's you feel is a bit much. All right. Start. Again, you can adjust your washes accordingly to your needs. It's not a big deal. Take this wider brush here into the wash, add a little depth to our tracks. Because this is a wider, broader area, it's all right. All right, let those dry. And now we're gonna start moving on, doing some of the other washes and other areas just real quick. You just take your time. You can see by not covering the entire model in a sludge wash, you have a lot more control, a lot less cleanup in the end. You just go around and methodically sort of touch certain areas, and the last step will be to again blend and tie everything together with our various base coat very lightly. We could take this model really far. All sorts of can do all sorts of fuel streaking and things like that. Let all this dry. Now our paint, again, as we had mentioned before, is not 100% technically chemically cured, so you're going this fast, you just want to be cautious, be careful that you don't start re-wetting your paint, or your base coats, I should say. All right, so you should get the idea here of what we're doing. And we're just gonna we're gonna move on into our next steps. Like we said, you can just take it as far as you want. The sky's really the limit. Just take your time. That's all there is to it. Okay, so off camera we had glued our tracks on, so basically it's Sherman tank. Looks like a Sherman tank. So we've taken some of our the faded OD that we had used previously, and we are just going to go in here and just carefully just kind of fade things in and out a little bit. Tone down some washes. Add a little more fading in there. Just a little bit, carefully. Again, we're going very fast. So tone down a little bit of that metallic on the gun barrel. Careful of your decals. And I'm kind of, like I mentioned earlier, kind of toning down some of the wash. You know, we could easily manipulate these washes, remove them, remove anything that we don't like. A little streaking there, a little additional. Slight highlights, but again, we have one more step that we're gonna do. Yeah, it's looking good. All right, so just always kind of spin it around. See if there's anything you want to take care of. All right, so basically this is our Sherman tank. We've got one last step. We're going to use MMW006 transparent dust, and we've actually thinned this down to more of a transparency using Mission Models thinner, so it's not straight from the bottle. Always test before you spray, and we've thinned it down because we want to be subtle. All right. And just remember you're gonna have more dust and dirt towards the bottom side where the running gear is. You just, but be cautious. Less is always more, and lightly build up. Take your time, think about it. You know, if you're wondering, you can always look at reference and so forth. You could check your environment, go look at, you know, trucks, construction equipment, photos online, see how the dust or grime or whatever will start to kind of build up, go a little heavier towards the bottom, kind of fade up as you move along. It's a good idea to let things dry so you have more of an idea of where your finish stands. Gonna get down the lower hull. Just go light. Be careful, because you can easily and quickly overdo it. You can always fix it if you do. If you're ever in doubt, just test on the side. Like we were saying before, you know, kind of pay attention where dust, grime, dirt will accumulate. And how it builds up. Now we could take this really far, but the whole idea, again, is a quick tutorial. But now it's up to you to create your style and signature. See, because as we always say, we could go for hours. Tone down our markings a bit. They do see wear and tear. All right, so here we've got our Rubicon models, 56 scale or 28 millimeter M4 composite Sherman tank. All right, and we've taken you through the basic steps. You can always check our other videos at our website for in-depth tech, mixing ratios, and so forth. The point of this video was to show you how quickly you can paint and what you can do with just an airbrush and a paintbrush for some smaller details. We always recommend taking your time, even though we were moving quite fast here, but the whole idea is to use your best judgment, patience, practice, and create your own signature and style. You know, determination and persistence, and again, just practice, learning new techniques and creating your own, you know, your own style and signature on the gaming table or the model contest and so forth. But you know, again, here it is. We're very happy with it. If we weren't making a video, we could probably do this model in, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes, give or take, 40 minutes. Just depends on how fast you want to go. Anyhow, we have more videos coming, and we're not sure what they're going to be. There'll be more gaming pieces, similar scale, and so forth. But you can apply some of our other techniques from other videos into your game pieces. So again, thanks for joining us. It was great working with you, and look forward to seeing you again. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.